All right, so what does it mean when a blockchain forks the code? So a lot of people have been asking me, what does it mean when a blockchain forks? Why are there so many different versions of Bitcoin and Ethereum and EOS? And what does that mean and how does that work? So basically, the reason for that is that all cryptocurrencies, all blockchain projects, they're open source. And what that means is anybody can see the code that is used to build these blockchains, or in other words, everybody can see exactly how they're built and pretty much copy and paste that code and recreate a replica of that blockchain, of that cryptocurrency. This is something that anybody can do, but understand that your network and your community doesn't always follow. So in order for you to have a quote unquote successful fork, you might want to have I want to say revolution, I guess, building that are going to be following you once you create this new blockchain, because you do want to have community and you do need block producers and miners and all that to maintain your blockchain. So a good analogy that I've heard, and it's actually a really good analogy to understand exactly what it means to fork and to create new blockchains, is the language of English or Spanish or whatever language it is that you speak. You'll notice that in different parts of the world, even if you speak, let's say English, they speak it in England, they speak it in America, they speak it in Ireland. But everywhere you go, it definitely sounds a little bit different. It feels a little bit different. If you're not used to speaking to somebody from that area, it may be a little bit hard to understand that person's lingo and dialect, because people fork the language, right? People take the original English language, which came from England hundreds and whatever thousands of years ago, and they create their own version of English and mix it with the local communities, and it's very diverse, right? That's very equivalent to what forking is. Now, something that can be confused with forking but is not forking is you can actually start your own blockchain, which has been done several times. And usually when people do that, they have these things called ICOs, initial coin offerings, that they use to raise money to fund their blockchain development. And that usually means they're going to build out their own code, and they're not going to use anybody else's code, and they're going to go their whole new direction on their own. Now, I'm going to use two popular blockchains as an example, Ethereum and EOS. So Ethereum was the first crypto blockchain to introduce smart contract functionality, and pretty much Ethereum worked great at first until we realized how many users were going to have to operate on the Ethereum platform. It had trouble scaling in a number of ways. It wasn't very fast. The programming language wasn't very easy to learn. There was all sorts of bugs in the programming, and Ethereum didn't operate as cleanly as a traditional database would. Now, EOS saw the problems of Ethereum and decided to build out from scratch a whole new code base that could address the issues of scaling that plagued Ethereum. Because once Ethereum started to get rolling, it's very hard to update core structural things within the code. It's often been compared to changing the engine out of a moving car. It's very, very hard to do. So what EOS did in an attempt to scale the scaling problems of Ethereum is they decided to go their own way, create their own code base from scratch, and address all of the problems that Ethereum had, and take all of the good and get rid of the bad. So oftentimes in the crypto space, you will hear people talking about fork, and oftentimes it does carry a negative connotation, in the same way that maybe if you go to another country, something that could be positive in your country, they remember it differently. There's always two sides of the story, two sides of the coin. But I do see forking as something that is core to decentralization and overall a very, very positive thing for this space, and actually exponentially grows our pace forward in this space, because everybody can try something new, everybody can go their own way. One analogy I like to think about is the history of England and the history of the Americas, right? So the English settlers that came here to the continent of North America, right? They were met with the Native Americans, but the reason they left England was because of they were tired of the way that they were being treated, the taxes they were paying, the Boston Tea Party, et cetera, right? And they pretty much threw the tea over the board, and then they set sail to the Americas. And then once they got to the Americas, they sort of wanted to create their whole new own society. And they wanted to bring the good, right, and leave the bad, which would have been the high taxes, and start fresh. And that actually really allowed America to grow exponentially quick, even though it was the new kid on the block. Even though it was a new country, it grew very, very fast because it had a chance to take what it had already learned was not working and start from scratch, right? Because unfortunately, and this is what I mean by the power of forking, any community will eventually get too big. Any community can eventually corrupt itself at a certain point once it gets to a certain size. And what I believe, this is my personal opinion, happened in the Ethereum community that often blinds people to the obvious problems of scaling in the Ethereum community is the fact that so many people made so much money as an early investor in Ethereum. And they found out about Ethereum when it was literally pennies. And at its peak, Ethereum was over $1,000 a coin. So those people are doing everything they can to sort of get those valuations back because they want to be rich, obviously. And then the people who found out about Ethereum later, who bought at the top and now it's far from the top, they want to recoup their losses. So everybody kind of wants to see Ethereum succeed. And sometimes I feel like that causes a push for something that is really not the path of least resistance. So in summary, I do think Ethereum will be successful, as it's already proven to have a solid track record of great developers and a great team, as well as a lot of capital behind it. But I also think EOS has the opportunity to take what Ethereum did and build on it and be equally, if not more successful in parallel, and they eventually will work together and coexist, and I strongly believe that.